When we think about the great mistakes of leaders in history, we usually think of scandals, corruption, or disastrous wars. We rarely think of accounting.
Accounting? That's a bit of a dry way to start, isn't it?
It sounds dry, but today we are looking at a story where a simple act of taking a census, counting people, triggered a catastrophe that nearly wiped out a nation. It's a bizarre moment in King David's life. He's not fighting a giant, he's not running from Saul, he's just counting his citizens. Why on earth was that such a massive problem?
It does sound like a bureaucratic, mundane task, doesn't it? But in the ancient context, and specifically in David's spiritual context, this was nuclear. We're looking at the texts from 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles today. And the core issue here isn't math, it's ownership.
Ownership?
Exactly. In the ancient Near East, you only count what you own. By ordering a census of Israel and Judah, David was subtly shifting his mindset. He was moving from, I am the shepherd of God's people, to, these are my assets. It was a shift from reliance on divine power to reliance on military statistics. He wanted to know the number of valiant men who drew the sword. He was measuring his own strength.
So it was an ego trip.
A dangerous one. And the fascinating thing is, everyone around him saw it. Even Joab.
Joab? The general? The guy who usually has no problem getting his hands dirty?
The very same. Joab is usually the one urging David to be more ruthless. But here, Joab practically begs the king not to do it. He says, May God multiply the people 100 times, but why does my Lord delight in this thing? Joab sensed that this was bringing guilt upon Israel. When your military commander, who kills people for a living, tells you that your paperwork is morally wrong, you should probably listen.
But David didn't listen.
No. The king's word prevailed, and this wasn't a quick afternoon survey. The texts tell us Joab and the captains spent over 9 months traversing the land, from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. Imagine that. 9 months of Joab traveling around, probably grinding his teeth, knowing this was a bad idea.
And the numbers came back huge, over 1 million fighting men in total. That should have made David feel secure, right? Mission accomplished.
You would think so. But the reaction is immediate and visceral. The moment the number is handed to him, David's heart strikes him. It's that sudden cold realization that you've crossed a line. He doesn't celebrate the data. He confesses. He says, I have done very foolishly.
It's interesting how success can sometimes feel like failure the moment you grasp it. But confession didn't stop the consequences. This is where the story gets incredibly dark, almost surreal. God sends the prophet Gad to David with a choice.
This is one of the most chilling multiple-choice questions in history. God offers 3 forms of judgment. Option 1, 7 years of famine. Option 2, 3 months of fleeing from enemies. Option 3, 3 days of pestilence, a plague.
Talk about being between a rock and a hard place. How do you even make that decision?
David's logic here is profound. He rejects fleeing from enemies because that puts him at the mercy of humans. And humans are cruel. He chooses the plague. His reasoning is, let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. He would rather face the wrath of God than the wrath of men, because he knows that even in judgment, God's character contains mercy.
That's a heavy gamble.
It was. And the cost was horrific. 70,000 men died. The text describes an angel of the Lord moving through the land, finally stretching out a hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it.
It's terrifying, but this is where the narrative shifts, right? It zooms in from a national disaster to a very specific location, a threshing floor.
Yes, the threshing floor of Araunah, or Ornan, depending on which text you read. This location is pivotal. It's not just a random farm. The angel stops there. God says, "It is enough." And David sees this angel suspended between earth and sky, sword drawn.
I can't imagine the visual, the king clothed in sackcloth falling on his face, and finally he stops making it about the numbers.
He takes full responsibility. He says, "I am the one who sinned. These sheep, what have they done?" He tries to deflect the judgment from the innocent onto himself, and that intercession opens the door for the solution. Gad tells him to build an altar right there, on that threshing floor.
So now we have a negotiation scene. David goes to Araunah, the owner of the property, and Araunah is terrified. He sees the king and the angel, and he basically tries to give the farm away.
It's a very human reaction. Here, Take the oxen for the sacrifice. Take the wood. Take the land. Just please fix this. Araunah wants to donate everything. It's a noble gesture.
But David refuses the gift, and this is the line that always sticks with me. He says, "I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, which cost me nothing."
That is the thesis statement of the entire episode, perhaps of David's entire life. He understood that worship without sacrifice is just performance. If Araunah gave him the oxen and the wood, it would be Araunah's sacrifice, not David's. David insisted on paying full price, 50 shekels of silver, later 600 shekels of gold for the whole site. He knew that for the relationship with God to be restored, he had to feel the weight of the cost.
It's a powerful principle. We like our spirituality to be convenient. David says it has to be costly. So he buys the floor, builds the altar, fire comes down, and the plague stops. But the story doesn't end there, does it? This plot of land has a future.
A massive future. This threshing floor becomes the site of the temple. The place where judgment was halted by mercy becomes the permanent dwelling place for God's name in Israel.
And yet, David isn't the one who gets to build the building.
No. And this is the bittersweet part of the narrative found in 1 Chronicles 22. David is essentially told, "You have shed too much blood." He's a wartime king. The house of God requires a man of peace, his son Solomon.
That has to be a blow to the ego. First, the census disaster, and now being told he's too bloodstained to build the legacy he wants.
It would destroy a lesser leader. But look at what David does. He doesn't sulk. He pivots. He becomes the ultimate prepper. He gathers the stone, the cedar, the iron, the gold. He organizes the workforce. He essentially builds the entire kit for Solomon to assemble. He accepts that his role is to prepare the way for the next generation, not to take the glory for the final product.
It's a transition from a conqueror to a father. He tells Solomon, "Be strong and courageous." He's passing the torch.
He is. And he's trying to ensure Solomon doesn't make the same mistakes. He emphasizes following the law of the Lord, seeking wisdom, not just counting swords. It's a redemption arc. David used his power to take life, or risk life, with the census. Now he uses his power to prepare for a house of worship.
And we also have Psalm 30, which is linked to this dedication. It feels like the emotional soundtrack to this whole ordeal.
It really is. You hear the echoes of the plague and the relief. Weeping may stay for the night, but joy comes in the morning. David writes about being lifted from the depths, about his mourning turning into dancing. He admits in the psalm that in his prosperity he felt unshakable. That was the pride of the census talking. But then God hid his face, and David was troubled.
It's amazing how honest these texts are. They don't hide the flaw.
They highlight the flaw because the flaw highlights the grace. The psalm ends with endless thanksgiving. David realizes that his security wasn't in the 1.1 million swordsmen. It was in the favor of God.
So looking back at this 10-minute journey, we went from a prideful head count to a devastating plague to a threshing floor and finally to the blueprint of the temple. What's the takeaway here for us modern listeners? We aren't kings and we aren't building stone temples.
I think there are two massive takeaways. First, be careful what you count. Whatever you count, you trust. If you're obsessively counting your money, your followers, your achievements, you are likely drifting away from trusting your source.
That's good. And the second?
The second is the principle of the threshing floor. True value requires cost. I will not offer that which costs me nothing. In a world that loves free, convenient, easy spirituality, David reminds us that real commitment, real love, and real restoration always come with a price tag, and we should be willing to pay it.
A profound place to stop. From the threshing floor to the temple, the cost is part of the beauty. Thanks for breaking this down with me today.
My pleasure. It's a story worth retelling.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, keep asking the hard questions.
If you have been blessed by this, please like, subscribe, and share this joy with others. God bless.